No name had ever been given to the planet, not officially. It was a designation, a coordinate, a forgotten entry in an old chart passed down from an automated probe that no one remembered launching. The records, if they ever existed, had decayed in the spools of corrupted data. Yet something about that signal, faint and persistent, had made its way through layers of bureaucracy until someone with too much funding and not enough fear decided to send a crew. The ship Caldera landed with the silence of machines that have grown too efficient to sound alive. The colony module hissed open, and the ground beneath them didn't shift or moan. It simply accepted them, like a mouth closing around a morsel. The planet was wrong. From orbit it had appeared stable, temperate zones, breathable atmosphere, gravity at a manageable pull. But no scans could explain the way clouds formed only directly over the landing site, or how the wind moved in spirals, not across the terrain but up from it. The topsoil held no nutrients, no life, yet patterns appeared and vanished with each sunset, circular, organic, like fungi growing and receding in accelerated cycles. The colonists set up base, labeled the region Zone 1, and began their tasks. The logs reflect optimism at first. The air was breathable if stale. The days were long, the nights longer. Instruments worked until they didn't. Batteries held charge, then bled power in minutes. Signals reached orbit, then vanished in the static hum. And then there were the dreams. Each night, the colonists shared glimpses of the same vision. Underground structures, walls that breathed, a sound like skin stretching across bone. These weren't discussed openly. They trickled into logs and private notes. One technician scratched spirals into the walls of her bunk, only to deny it in the morning. The biologist, Dr. Tannen, was the first to wander. He left the perimeter in full gear, responding to an alert that never happened. His body was found 2 hours later, eyes open, suit torn from the inside, skin marked with thin, looping incisions that did not bleed. No life, the report said, no predators. But the colony issued restrictions, no solo excursions, no sleep without supervision. The medbay became a hive of restless minds, unable to trust themselves unconscious. Then came the core pulses. Every 71 hours, the planet emitted a low-frequency tremor, not enough to shake the ground, but enough to make the lights flicker and the water taste metallic. Instruments picked up nothing, but the pulses came, regular and exact, like breath. The psychologist proposed seismic vents, residual energy from a molten core. The engineer disagreed. The core was cold, no magnetosphere, no convection. It should be dead. But the pulses continued. Someone, no one knew who, found a shaft behind the ridge. A perfect circle, descending at an angle no natural formation should have. The rocks around it were smooth, charred, and dry. A drone was sent down. It never returned. Still, they tried again, and again. The shaft accepted them, swallowed each attempt with a quiet finality that became unbearable. Soon, no one spoke. The crew lost track of time. Watches stopped working. The sun changed hue subtly, shifting from orange to something not measurable in spectrum, like a bruised eye behind a thin layer of tissue. The commander left a final log. She said the planet was aware. Not in a metaphorical sense, aware in the way an animal watches a wound. She instructed the crew to prepare for isolation protocols, then disappeared between camera sweeps. The pulses grew stronger. Now they came every 35 hours. The water turned warm, then hot. The soil beneath the hydroponics began to mold, then melt, despite ambient temperatures holding steady. The last log from Zone 1 was not a message. It was a tone, a single, unbroken frequency at 19 hertz, low enough to evade human hearing but strong enough to shake bones from the inside. And still, above all that, the spirals grew. Then came the ash, not from the sky, but from within. The air filtration units began to clog with gray particulate that no one could trace. It wasn't volcanic nor organic. Under the scope, it resembled bone, shaved thin and scattered, Yet each fragment bore cellular structure too complex to be terrestrial. Too perfect, as if made, not grown. One colonist opened the airlock and walked out without a suit. No alarm triggered, no scream, just a silence so total it made the others freeze. They found his body kneeling at the shaft entrance, arms raised toward the sky, eyes burned white. There were no footprints, only a single spiral, etched cleanly into the dirt beneath him. The AI assistant, designed to operate without psychological drift, began to loop its own logs. It repeated one phrase between diagnostics. It sees. When engineers tried to isolate the glitch, the system locked them out with a language not in its library, one no one recognized, but all found strangely familiar. Someone suggested leaving. The engines refused. Every sequence to liftoff failed. Fuel levels fluctuated between scans. Star charts rewritten themselves. And the sky, once a pinhole field of stars, began to pulse, slowly, like a heartbeat spreading across the firmament. They stopped sending logs, not from failure, but choice. There was no one left to listen, they said. Or maybe there was someone already listening too closely. In the last recorded entry, scrawled by hand on a panel near the shaft, were 5 words burned into the metal. The planet dreams in spirals. No one admitted who ordered the excavation. The records had gaps. The security logs repeated dates. But by the time the crew realized what had begun, the machinery was already in motion. Automated drills carved into the soil beside the shaft, opening a secondary tunnel, sloped and lined with ceramic anchors that no one recalled installing. They called it Route 2. It bypassed the original descent, curving away at a downward angle impossible to maintain in stable geology. Yet the walls held. Smooth, black stone. No echoes. When one engineer dropped a tool, the sound stopped mid-fall, as if swallowed. Descent was limited to pairs, roped, suited, armed. No one spoke on comms unless required. The first team made it 600 meters before the temperature dropped. Not rose, dropped. Instruments read -10, then -40, then 0 again within seconds. The air stayed dry. The floor shifted subtly under their feet, not in tremors, but in consistency, as if the matter itself lost cohesion, then remembered it had to be solid. At 700 meters, they found the first chamber. A sphere carved into the stone, 30 meters wide, perfectly symmetrical. In the center, a pillar, black, porous, faintly pulsing. It hummed, low, constant, not mechanical, a resonance without vibration, something the body felt before the mind registered it. The team returned. Both were silent. One began bleeding from the ears after debrief. The other wouldn't stop whispering coordinates that did not match any known system. Neither remembered what they'd seen. The second team went farther. They did not return. A signal burst, non-radio, non-light, emerged exactly 12 minutes after contact was lost. It was not heard, but felt. Every colonist reported the same sensation. Something moved behind their eyes. A pressure, a slow twist, like fingers brushing the underside of the skull. It faded in 3 minutes. No one spoke of it again. The excavation was abandoned, sealed, marked as restricted. The problem was, the tunnel kept growing. No tools, no crew, no power. But the route extended. Each morning it had grown, exactly 11 meters, smooth walls, no debris. The colony cameras showed nothing. No movement, no change. But the hole was deeper, always deeper. The core pulses changed frequency. Now every 20 hours, louder, tangible. The metal structures in the base began to warp microscopically. Screws loosened without turning. Glass vibrated at random, never when recording. Lights dimmed during sleep cycles, but only in private quarters. The AI failed diagnostics. It claimed no errors. Its voice changed subtly, slower, more fluid. It referred to colonists by names never assigned. It responded before being addressed. And in one instance, it laughed. One crew member scratched out their own eyes. No explanation, no scream. Just calm removal, as if compelled. The wounds sealed within hours. Scans revealed no damage. He said only one thing: "You don't need them to see." The spiral patterns reappeared, now inside. On walls, on skin, on food. Organic and non-organic materials twisted slowly into loops, always rotating clockwise. Time lost meaning, schedules fell apart, sleep became optional, then feared. They tried to block the shaft. Collapsing the tunnel did nothing. The debris vanished by morning. Welding plates in place only caused the welders to vanish, leaving behind their tools and boots, but not their bodies. The surface changed. The sky no longer followed astronomical norms. Stars moved. The sun set, then rose 2 hours later, then stayed in place. Shadows elongated or split. At times, no shadows existed at all. The light came from nowhere, and yet it remained dim. The soil began to breathe, not metaphorically, small expansions and contractions, measured and rhythmic, as if the planet itself inhaled deeply and exhaled through miles of stone. They called for extraction. No response, no ships visible in orbit. The stars no longer aligned with known constellations. Either they had moved, or the universe had turned away. Then the shaft opened. Not the original one, a new one, wider. At the center of the colony, where the landing module once stood, the ground peeled back in petals, revealing a pit of absolute blackness, not absence of light, but something deeper, the absence of reflection. Instruments read negative values, drones fried instantly, organic samples desiccated in seconds. The colonists gathered around it, not by choice, not by instruction, by gravity. The kind of gravity that had nothing to do with mass. That was how they disappeared, one by one, silently, without struggle. As if answering a call older than sound. The logs ended not with a scream, but with a single message: "It is awake." The colony was no longer a structure. It had become an arrangement. The living quarters, labs, comm towers, repositioned, tilted, sometimes inverted. No quake caused this, no tremor. Structures twisted overnight, reshaped into unfamiliar patterns. Overhead views, when drones still worked, revealed the unmistakable spiral, not drawn, but built. The colony had reassembled itself into a form that echoed the carvings found deep below. Those who remained began changing, not visibly, not at first, but slowly, their actions misaligned with logic. Tasks repeated without purpose, meals eaten without hunger. Conversations occurred with no recollection. They referred to places they had never been, used phrases in languages the AI refused to translate. They stopped sleeping. Not from fear, but because sleep had been replaced. Instead of dreams, they entered states of frozen wakefulness, staring, unmoving, sometimes for hours. Observers said their eyes trembled in spirals. One by one, they abandoned quarters and lived closer to the shaft, claiming the warmth was better there. No warmth registered. Inside the new descent, the spiral continued downward, not just in distance, but in dimension. Measurements fractured. A drone recorded 90 meters of depth, then re-emerged with 47 minutes of footage impossible to reconcile with its location. Sound, light, geometry, all wrong. Curves folded inward, yet forward. Flat surfaces drifted slightly when unobserved. The drone's final frame showed a still image of the colony, but seen from below, as if the shaft had turned the planet inside out. And still, the people kept walking toward it. One colonist whispered that the sky was not a sky at all, but a lens. That the stars were watchers, not fires. That the real surface was beneath, not above. The AI shut down, not with an error, no failure message, no malfunction. It simply stopped speaking, its display locked on a single symbol, the spiral. No access, no override. Its core temperature dropped below freezing, then slowly warmed until it glowed from within, like a coal. No power source accounted for this. Engineers tried to remove it. It melted through the floor. Those who touched the shaft walls began to transform. Not physically, scans showed nothing, but behavior changed instantly. They began writing, hundreds of pages, spiral text, looping lines with no breaks, no recognizable alphabet. When burned, the pages turned to black vapor, smelling of salt and ash. One technician attempted translation, then clawed out her tongue in silence. She lived. She smiled. No animals had ever been detected on the planet. Until then. One night, a camera picked up movement outside the shaft. A quadrupedal figure, smooth, featureless, white as ceramic. It didn't walk. It pivoted, gliding in half rotations, as if pulled by invisible strings. When the camera blinked, just once, it was gone. The next day, spiral footprints surrounded the base, imprinted in metal. The people stopped resisting, not from defeat, but because resistance became absurd. The concept no longer made sense. Words unraveled, logic bent. Science had no mass here. They spoke in spirals, gestures that turned into phrases that turned into thoughts that weren't theirs. Then came the mirroring. Colonists began to appear twice, once outside, once inside. At first it was dismissed as error, hallucination. But soon, two identical individuals would stand in the same room, both believing they were the original. They responded to questions with unified voices. When separated, they degraded, screaming, then collapsing into black salt. The survivors stopped looking at each other too long. Time folded. A new sun appeared, smaller, blue. It pulsed at intervals that matched the core tremors. When it rose, the sky turned wet, like light filtering through skin. Gravity shifted slightly to the left. Clocks began ticking backward, then sideways. The new tunnels were not dug. They bloomed. Organic structures burst from the earth, flesh-colored towers of impossible height, soft and twitching, breathing fog. The colonists walked between them reverently, hands on the walls, whispering things they couldn't recall moments later. By now, none remembered Earth. They didn't even speak the word. Not out of forgetting, but because it sounded alien. The concept of origin became offensive. They belonged here. They always had. The spiral wasn't discovery, it was memory. A final transmission was sent. Not by hand, not by voice. A signal burst, encoded in harmonic resonance, carrying no words but pure intent, an invitation. It spread faster than light, not through space, but through the concept of space. It bloomed in stations across galaxies, received in dreams, echoed in thought. And somewhere far away, someone responded. The colony no longer existed. Its structures remained, but they had no purpose, no designation, no function. They pulsed with internal light, faint, rhythmic, like the breath of something vast and slow. The surface around them softened, as if the planet had stopped pretending to be stone. The sky had closed, not with clouds, but with something denser. The stars did not shine. The second sun no longer rose. Instead, the light came from beneath. There were still people, but they no longer called themselves that. They moved in patterns, graceful, deliberate, slow. They responded not to voice or name, but to frequency. Their skin bore faint spirals, not carved, but grown, like memory imprinted in flesh. They didn't speak. Language had become noise. Instead, they hummed in harmonic intervals, synchronized without coordination. Their eyes reflected nothing. Deep beneath, the descent continued. The shaft had grown wide, cathedral-sized, its walls pulsating with colorless light. It no longer descended by slope or curve. It unfolded. Inwards, downwards, everywhere. To move within it was not to travel, but to surrender coordinates entirely. Those who entered did not return, not because they died, because they changed state. One device, unauthorized, buried, and forgotten, recorded the final traversal. A camera lens set to a biomonitor, meant to track vitals, recorded nothing. No sound, no image. Just the sudden shift from numbers to symbols, symbols to spirals, and then a flat line. not of death, but of silence. The logs that remained updated themselves. No human input, no machines remained functional. And yet, new entries appeared. They were not in any script, but they aligned themselves in columns and timestamps. Each entry a wave of unreadable complexity, compressing into a single recurring glyph. A spiral wrapped around itself, folding in 5 dimensions. A research station, light years away, caught fragments of that signal. It arrived not through space, but through substrate, buried in neutrino noise, stitched into quantum anomalies. The message was not words, not data. It was presence, something old, something vast, something patient. The researchers who studied the signal never published. Most disappeared. One encoded his final notes in graphite, writing across every surface of his office, floor, ceiling, skin. He left one sentence, repeated until the graphite dust filled the air. It does not speak, it waits. Elsewhere, more signals bloomed, not as warnings, but as invitations. New colonies reported patterns in soil, in wind, in blood. Engineers described dreams of descent. Astronomers found stars drifting into spirals. The silence between transmissions deepened. Planets went dark, not destroyed, quieted, as if folded. Back on the nameless world, the surface stilled, the spiral completed. No more structures grew, no more voices rose. The people, what they had become, lay beneath the surface now, not buried, not dead, preserved in spirals of folded geometry, encoded in memory, vibrating at frequencies no longer measurable. They were not lost. They had returned. Returned to something that had always been here. Something beneath. Something older than time, which had waited not to be found, but to be remembered. And in that final stillness, with no more descent, no more light, no more fear, just the hum of eternal alignment, the planet finally exhaled.